Good morning. Obviously, you're awake. You've had your coffee. You're eating your breakfast. All is good. Welcome to the Diversity Insights Breakfast Series. This is number 2 in our series. The last one we had the mayor of St. Paul talking about issues in St. Paul. This time we're going to talk about issues all across our country. I am Steve Hummerkaus, the Executive Director of the Forum on Workplace Inclusion, so I'm really excited that you're here because the topic we're talking about today is in the news every single day. Has anyone not heard about immigration in the last 12 hours, perhaps? A little bit about the Forum on Workplace Inclusion. So our mission is to engage people, advance ideas, and ignite change. Hopefully we'll be able to do some of that this morning. The conference itself is one of the largest and oldest in the country on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Last year we had over 1,600 people from 45 states and 15 countries attending. They were thought leaders, industry leaders, practitioners, line leaders, and managers. They worked in D&I and HR, and they also did everything else that anybody does. And they came from across sectors. They came from healthcare and nonprofits and higher ed and K-12 and government and corporations from all across the country and, as you heard, all across the world. We are committed at the conference to co-creation, to application back at work. What we want to do with you is give you something applicable for you that you can use in your workplace and in society. We're all about interactivity and real people doing real work in real time. So that is kind of the forum. That's our commitment that we place in all the things that we do, including the conference and, of course, this morning's breakfast. Of course, my marketing guy would be very upset with me. I didn't tell you that. Indeed, the conference is coming up in about, 7 weeks. April 16 through the 18th. Early bird registration ends at midnight today. So if you want to save about $190 on the 3-day conference package, when you leave here, you go back to your office and you sign up. Because we want you to be a part of that 1,600 or more people that will be assembling at the convention center coming up in just those 7 weeks. He also wanted me to talk to you about our podcast series. We just launched that in January, so you can take the forum with you wherever you go and listen to our podcast. The most recent one was called Race, Inclusion, and Colorism, How Understanding the History Can Help Us Transform. We also have a webinar series. Well, the next one is not for a couple months because we've got this conference thing coming up. On May 23rd, it's called It's a Big Fat Deal. It's still a big fat deal. Lisa Love from TPT Channel 2 will be talking about size and how that affects all people in our society. So without any more ado on the marketing side, let's get to this morning. So the title of this morning's presentation is Using Storytelling to Educate, Empower, and Build Empathy Across Difference. So this morning we're going to hear from 4 people. All of them are either immigrants themselves or have an immigrant story to tell. Their stories obviously affect their lives, but if you think about it, they affect our lives too. And if you think even further, most of us have immigrant stories. We just don't think about them very often. We don't realize we all have immigrant stories. Here are 3 of mine that have either changed who I am or changed my worldview. So my first immigrant story is the story of German immigrants to the United States. At the turn of the last century, my mother's family immigrated from Germany to southern Indiana. They were prosperous farmers. They fit in well with their community of all the folks who lived in that part of the state. They also had their own German community that had a German school and a German church, and they spoke German amongst themselves, and all was good until World War I, when they became the enemy. They became other, and they were outcast. Their school was closed, their church was closed, their language was shut down. They had to speak English. I remember my great-grandmother's accent. I remember her voice. But I never heard her stories. She was silenced. And that changed my history. My second immigration story, the one of the undocumented immigrant. I have a very good friend who works very hard. He's very generous and very kind. He has 2 jobs, and he works really hard at them. And his employers and his colleagues and his customers all love him because he does such a good job for all of them. You may very well have been served by him at several restaurants here in downtown Minneapolis. He also, through remittances, takes care of his disabled mother back in Mexico. And he has a path to permanence in the United States, but he's still under a deportation hearing process. I've been to the hearings, and they are fascinating to watch and emotionally draining. The last one was in November. It was 4 hours long, and it was one question after another, after another, after another about everything in his life. He still has another hearing to go, and he showed me recently the bill from his lawyer from just last September until this last week, with more bills to come at $28,000 that he needs to pay just to prove he has a right to be in this country. He holds his head high and he works through it. But his despair is evident. He's afraid to tell his story. His status has silenced him. And that hurts my heart. My final immigrant story is the story of my adopted child. My daughter Katie is an immigrant adopted from Honduras over 30 years ago. Her original name, Lorenza Maradiaga Carillas. I spent 40 days in the country working through the adoption process to try to get her adoption finalized. And while I was there, I saw how the people lived, how they really were, not how I was told they were by my white privileged history here in the United States, but how they really lived. I saw how they lived. I heard their dreams and their aspirations. I saw how they lived in great poverty, but yet saw their beautiful land and the beautiful people that they were. In the face of the caravans of the people at the southern border, I see the face of my daughter. In some small part, I understand their story and how they have been silenced at the border. For my daughter, immigration changed her life forever. For me, instead of silence, her immigration story changed my view of the world and allowed me to do the work that I do today. So I ask you, in this moment, what is your immigrant story? We're going to explore those today with our 4 guests from Green Card Voices. So I'm going to introduce to you Thea Rosman-Clark. This is her biography. Thea Rosman-Clark is the executive director of Green Card Voices. Previously, she worked for Reconciliation and Culture Cooperative Network, a New York City nonprofit working with immigrants from the former Yugoslavia. Thea is an NYU graduate and with a degree in Near and Middle Eastern Studies and has a PhD in Cultural History, specializing in oral history recording from the University of Nova Gorica. She is a first-generation immigrant from Slovenia and a 2015 Bush Leadership Fellow. Born in Yugoslavia, Thea moved to the US at the age of 20 after receiving the George Soros Open Society's scholarship. She moved to Minneapolis in 2012 and soon after co-founded Green Card Voices. Through this work, she has interviewed close to 400 immigrants coming from over 120 countries, residing in 7 states. Under her leadership, the organization has expanded from Minnesota to North Dakota, Georgia, and Wisconsin. She has edited the organization's 6 books, including the 4 Green Card Voices Youth Voices volumes, Green Card Entrepreneur Voices, and Voices on Immigrant Storytelling, which is a teacher's guide, as well as the latest Story Stitch card game. By the way, all these books are available for purchase outside after our session today. I want to welcome to the breakfast Thea Rosman-Clark.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming here. If you got up and came here, today is already a very good day. And I just this past weekend spent it at the retreat 4 hours north, and people are going through a lot. And we got to have another day, which is great. I'm so excited. We have exciting panelists, so I will not take so much time. And most importantly, I'm very excited for you to be playing the Story Stitch. We have launched it this fall, and it's been so successful. We barely are able to keep up with the the printing demand. And I truly hope that you will have a wonderful experience playing, getting to know people around your table. But just to quickly take you through a journey, how the migration has affected. And before I even go on, I first would like to say that this land is the land that is and was inhabited by the native people. And they usually don't necessarily have an immigrant story. They might have moved around within the United States, but they don't have the immigrant story necessarily. And then there's a lot of people that were brought here by force, and there's people living here that are descendants. And then, of course, people that came to this country are immigrants and refugees that came from all over the world across different generations. And then there's, of course, that fifth category, which is people that are a mix of all those. So just making sure we know that. So I quickly want to take you through a journey. This is how United States was in 1900. And this is how it was just 80 years later, 20 years after that. And this is where we're going. So immigration in the United States is changing rapidly, and the face of who immigrants are is changing. And in the future, the majority of first-generation immigrants will be coming from Asia. If you do a simple Google search of who an immigrant is, there's 5 dominant narratives. Still till today, the predominant narrative in schools and other places is the Ellis Island black and white photos type narrative. There's many reasons why. There's unfortunately still a very, very strong presence of seeing immigration through the lens of history. We probably all know why that is the reason, and that is one narrative. Another narrative has to do a lot with immigration reform, border control, security. It's a topic that is used widely by the politics and policies, and that is another narrative. The third narrative, which is oftentimes the only positive narrative, is rags to riches story, where people like to say, well, look at this immigrant, he's made it against all odds. There's always that story with only, I suggest you put in a Google, immigrant pocket dollars. You will see hundreds of stories, because there's a certain lens that people like to share, the quote-unquote positive immigrant stories. Came here with $50 in the pocket, didn't speak any English, and now just look at them. Of course, the problem with those stories is it makes everybody, all the rest of 99% immigrants, don't look very good. And it's really challenging to live in this type of narrative. Another narrative is portraying immigrants, especially refugees, as in constant need of assistance. All our data shows that anybody that goes through hard time does need help for a period of time, but usually through hard work and perseverance, that is very temporarily. And they usually work even harder and appreciate more their gains and really contribute so much in the future. And finally, xenophobia and global migration crisis, unfortunately, are global. I've been traveling and meeting people, and it's really something that is not affecting just the United States, unfortunately, but everybody. And people like me that do this work, we're all trying to figure out what is the best innovative way to try and deal with this crisis, really, and to, again, with intentionality, start bringing people together. United States really is a unique country in that respect, because I think we have a lot to teach others. Because in terms of percentage, United States has the largest percentage of first-generation immigrants in the world. There's 16% of all the first-generation U.S. Immigrants in U.S. are immigrants. So I truly believe we will figure out how to do an inclusion of immigrants in a meaningful and thoughtful and prosperous way, and then hopefully share it with the world. Which brings me back to the the work of Green Card Voices Stories. You know, when I was, so just a little bit about myself. So I was 15 when the war in my country started, and 19 when we had a genocide, when 8,500 approximately men and boys older than 11 were brutally killed in the span of 5 days. And I saw, you know, through my teenage years, it didn't happen overnight. It actually, in the beginning stages, looked very much like what some things look here. People started dehumanizing one another, and it escalated over time. And this is where my passion really stems from. And when I started studying oral history and social studies, doing research about storytelling, there's something very unique that happens when people authentically share stories and other people actively listen. An exchange happens, which I hope today you will experience. An exchange happens where you are touched and forever changed. And this later, hopefully with Story Stitch card game, you will experience. Because there's MRI studies, I kid you not, same parts of the brain light up if you're able to do that. When you hear pain, you hear pain. When you hear, you know, a different emotion, the same thing happens. So 6 years ago, already we were very clear, a group of us came together, it was very clear to us that, you know, the stereotypes were getting more and more negative, and we would hear, you know, I still remember a friend of mine saying, a Somali family saying, when we travel to visit our friends in Fargo, we don't stop even if kids need to go to the restroom because we know we're going to be harassed at a gas pump. You know, stories like this just, and there's so many, really made it realize that if we don't do something now in terms of, you know, bringing people together, things will just escalate. I apologize for this slide. I don't know what happened. So we created Green Card Voices. We have 400 stories. We edited them down to 5 minutes. So we have social media, website with all the 400 stories. We have a YouTube channel. We have now 6 volumes of books. And we have these traveling exhibits that you see outside. And there's like 7 sets for different communities. We have now recorded 420 stories. Again, all over the place. Wisconsin is not on the map yet, but we've been there too. And trying to go as much to the rural communities as possible and small towns. So we did a big collection in central Minnesota and other parts, because we see there's even larger problems there, where 42% consider immigrants a burden. So yeah, you know, I don't know how many of you come from nonprofits, but when we co-founded Green Card Voices 6 years ago, we're like, let's get some grants, let's get some donations. And it really didn't work that great. Although I do have to say about 6 months prior to these recent elections, people started calling me and sending me emails, and they were like, by the way, like, I knew this was a good idea, but now your work is essential. And I was like, okay, thank you for being like ahead of the game. Like, I tried to prevent this to happen, but so it started getting a little bit better. And then after the Bush Fellowship, I was able to learn more about social entrepreneurship, hence the books. Now this is really great because we're able to sell 15,000 copies. And I have to say, again, unfortunately, because bullying in high schools and universities is up, it's a resource that 75% of people that buy books actually use them in college or high school settings. And finally, you know, empathy is built through stories, but also we just finished recording stories of Minnesota immigrants in STEM. You know, it's amazing, especially in academia or in medicine, people are like, you know, we come from all over the world, but at the end of the day, it matters, like, do you know how to heal this disease? Do you know how to do research about, you know? So one way we try to build empathy is by bringing together people that are in similar fields, because, you know, if you can connect to someone because of your expertise or professional, you know, experience, then you can connect maybe on other levels too. you realize, oh, we are very similar. Although, you should be able to do that already, but like I said, it's sometimes difficult. This brings me to the Story Stitch game. Game is just a trick. It's not a game, but we wanna, especially, we wanna make it sound fun. Because if you're like, you're gonna be doing this activity, and you're gonna be really vulnerable, and you're gonna be sharing things that are really difficult, you don't even know you're gonna be sharing, people will be like, whoa, don't even get there. So we're calling it a card game, but what we actually did, true story, like I am constantly thinking like, okay, so now we've done 400 stories, we're in 4 states, situation is getting worse, like what do we do? We're constantly trying to think like, how do we make things better, right? So, my team and I, like, we were like, okay, this is great, we're sharing immigrant stories, but how, like, we know that all the stories are important. And how do we go to this next level? How to have even deeper conversations? How to make real meaningful change? And we were like, well, all stories are important. Let's do exchange of stories. So we've created this process, co-creation, and we brought together 50 community members, and we went through 4 different iterations of different games that we tried to develop. And it's really a labor of love that took us a year to produce. So we've started with 200 questions. You have only 33 now in front of you. But the idea is that all you need is 6 to 8 people, ideally people from diverse backgrounds, because you're going to be sharing stories with one another. So when we actually start playing, I'm going to ask you, if you came with 6 of your colleagues, you might want to get up and sit at a different table, because you might know them already pretty well. But the idea really is to use this card game to very quickly connect people to one another through their stories, through their shared experiences, and have that empathy juices flowing, right? How I was telling you that parts of our brains light up. So yeah, there's instructions there. It's going to be very intuitive. Main thing I want to just share is that there's 33 story cards. So you share a story, but then everybody gets equal number of stitch cards. So as someone is done sharing their stories, anybody around the table can play stitch card. You put stitch card in the middle, and then you can or share similar story or ask that person a question or give a comment about the existing story. It's going to be very easy. And especially if you work, some of you might work with others and trying to get them to be more inclusive and diverse. It's a great game. Like I said, just use the word game. They're going to be like, yeah. Especially in Midwest, people are like, board games, this is so fun. So yeah, it's a great trick. So yeah, we launched this card game at the Bush Connect in 2018, played it with 320 leaders in Minnesota, from Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, and it was very successful. So we got additional funding from the Bush Foundation to spread it around even further. And that's all from me. Thank you so much. I guess I'm introducing you. Okay. Am I? I don't know. So they asked us to have a panel, and I'm just so delighted that these wonderful people are joining me, and they will also share a few words before we actually start playing the game. This is totally not rehearsed, so I'm totally improvising. But Green Card Voices would not be here if it weren't for Miguel Ramos. I really have to say that. He's the very first chair of our board. It's when I was completely lost, and I was like, how do you start a nonprofit? He was the one that said, well, these are some of the things you might consider. And I did all of that and more, and he supported me every way, in every way along the way. So that's Miguel Ramos from Minnesota Twins. Next to him is Luis Versailles, who is the current chair of the board. Very, very brave role. And finally, Zainab Abdi, who's our mouthful. Wait, she named herself, she gave herself a title, Immigrant and Refugee Youth Ambassador for Green Card Voices. She's also one of our Green Card Youth Voices Minneapolis authors. And we're very proud of her that she just co-wrote a book with Malala called We Are Displaced that came out in January. And she's, yes. She is a junior at St. Catherine's. And we started this journey when she was a senior in high school, all-immigrant public high school in Minneapolis. So without further ado, I will invite each to give their reflection on the title of today's talk.
Okay, let me stand up here because I don't see the other people on the other side of the room. I don't want to be in the corner like when my mom put me in the corner when I do something bad. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. And I met Tia when I was in high school too. No, not true. Really, today's topic is a very important and conversation in the United States, more now than ever. But let me tell very brief something about my own personal history. I strongly believe that everyone in this room has a history to tell. Every human in this room are diverse because every human in this room is unique. We don't have two or you, we have only one. So I came to this country. Well, first, my father died when I was 17 years old, and we live in poverty. We don't have money to funeral or nothing, and people said to me, now you're the man of the house. And I said, well, what mean man of the house? You don't have a house. We don't own house. But then I took the challenge because my father told to me, you are the one. So for that time, my life changed, and before he died, after he died. And everything in my mind was moving forward, provide to my mom something that she don't have, to provide for my future wife, something that my mom never have, provide to my kid something I never have because I can't go to school. I need to go to work. I don't finish my high school. So with that in mind, keep moving myself in Puerto Rico and working hard. So, and when the time comes to say how I can move to the next level, I hear the history, I read books, not too many, but I read some books. They talk about this United States of America, a place that you can go there and you're going to be successful like this, a place that's an opportunity for everyone, a place that immigrants build a great nation, all the kind of stuff. They say, I want to be in that place. And I came here, and I came here with that perception. First of all, I thought, how is the life in the United States of America? And find out I don't have any idea. It was completely different than I thought. I saw I speak English, and when I started to speak, if you don't understand me now, can you imagine it 28 years ago? That was awful. But the most challenging is people don't take the time to try to understand. We live in a very hurried society, Then later, of course, I came to Minnesota. I saw Minnesota in summer, and when I moved in winter. So I don't have idea about this. But the thing is tough when we talk about immigrants, because I thought I'm part of, it's about me and Americans, and it's not. It's me and many, many Asian American, Latin American, I don't know how many American, African American, whatever. And they call me alien. So it looked like I came from another planet, And at that time, the movie Alien was, you can imagine, I said, whoa, I look so ugly, But that's changed. It was not until something happened that I said, no, enough is enough. First I worked in Nestle in Puerto Rico, selling millions of dollars. Or here, because I don't speak English, nobody believed in what I can do, so I started cleaning floor. But one day, my daughter came home crying. A little girl, 7 years old, 6.5, 7 years old, crying. And she said, Dad, I hate the school. I hate the school. Why we're here? Let's back home. And I asked her, what happened to you, my daughter? And she went to say, please tell me what happened. And she said, the kid bullied me, laughing at me, because I don't speak English. I don't understand them, they don't understand me. She was the only Latina in the whole school at that time in Apple Valley. And I said to her, I understand what happened to you because the same thing happened to me, my daughter. And she said, what that? The kid don't want to play with you? I said, the big ones, the bigger ones. People don't have time to try to understand what you have in your mind and what you have in your heart, really who you are. And then I said to her, well, let's do this. Let's make a commitment. You and me, we are going to work together to demonstrate to those people that we are going to be more successful than people that was born in this country. We have value, we have courage, and we have determination, and we are going to put those together. You're not alone in this journey. To make history short, because we have other two people going to show you story. Today, my daughter is a lawyer. She speaks English, Spanish, and French. She had her own law office. She has a radio show program talking about immigration, and helping the community. In my case, I was starting cleaning floor. I keep moving and keep moving and keep moving. Yes, now I am the director of diversity and inclusion from Minnesota Twins. Yes, I am board member of St. Paul Foundation. Yes, I was board member of Science Museum. Yes, I was board member of United Way, and go on and go on and go on. And now people say, oh, how good you are. I am the same person like 20 years ago. So no titles, all that kind of thing, no matter who you are. So today I hope, and when you hear the other history, I'm not asking nobody to change the world. I'm asking people to change your own world. I'm asking you to start from yourself. Hopefully you can continue with your family. Hopefully you can continue your community. Hopefully we can continue in Minnesota, and hopefully we can continue in the United States. Thank you for being here.
Okay, good morning. Buenos dias. How is everyone? All right, I want to, first of all, extend a thank you to Steve and the Forum for this opportunity, and to our amazing leader and Executive Director, Taya, for her amazing leadership. This organization, Green Card Voices, I firmly believe is, as Miguel talks about, don't worry about changing the world, worry about changing yourself. I have a belief that this organization is changing the world. And this importance of this conversation of understanding who we are, as Miguel tells his story of his daughter. And what I wanted to offer to you all is a bit of my story, and more importantly, a way for you to share your story. As Miguel said, we all have a story to share. And so in my work at Green Card Voices, I'm one of our board chairs. Been in the organization since this last fall. And in my job, my work is working with school districts around the country and really thinking about what does it look like for us to develop this next generation of young people who not only are academically prepared, but are actually racially literate and have an understanding, have a leadership skill to eradicate this mental disorder called racism that has infected our globe, certainly our society and our communities, right? And so I wanted to share with you all a process in which you can think about your story. And the first part of this process is just turning and talking to a partner. And I want you to start a conversation with that partner about, in your life, how much has your life been impacted by race? From the time you were born to this morning, just turn and talk. How much of that life has been impacted by race? I'm just going to say that.
One recent thing that I'm trying to fix or find solution is as psychiatry, even
You
though
said
we are
question and
all
answer
girls,
starts at 10 o'clock,
I
right?
see there is that
It's 9 o'clock. He said question. What time do they need? All right. So I'm going to interrupt you. Now, to be clear, the question I asked you was how much of your life has been impacted by race? And because of our different experiences, some of what some people heard was how much of my life has been negatively impacted by race. All right. Some of what some people heard was how much of my life have I been around people who are racially different than me? That's not what I asked. I asked how much of your life has been impacted by race. Right? And then some of us got our pie chart out and they thought, okay, here's my gender, here's, my nationality, here's my socioeconomic group, here's my sexual orientation, and what I'm going to offer to you is race is sitting over that whole pie chart. The same way that your gender walked in with you, so did your race. And it will walk out with you as well. Okay? So I want you to consider that the whole conversation you have about diversity, equity, and inclusion is a conversation about race. And the degree to which we're conscious of that makes a tremendous difference. Okay? Because I would offer there is no diversity challenge in the United States. There is no diversity challenge in this room. We're beautifully diverse right here. But there absolutely is a racially predictable challenge to, in that beautiful diversity, whose ways of being, whose languages, whose way of showing up in the world are valued and whose are not. And that is predictable by race here, particularly in Minnesota. We're really good at it in Minnesota. Right? We do our work all across the United States and to a lesser degree in the South Pacific. And a gentleman made a presentation and said, 3 countries that lead the planet in racial disparity: United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States. Minnesota leads the United States. The Twin Cities lead Minnesota. So we are literally living in the place, one of the places that leads the planet in not getting this. Right? And so I want to give us a way to start to discover this. And the first idea is for everyone in this room, there was a situation that happened for us where we shifted from just being people in the world and something presented itself, a situation, a conversation, and you shifted from being just a person in the world to being a racial being. And that idea of that first moment when you lost what we would call your racial innocence is the start of a story. And in my work, we would call that story a racial autobiography. Okay? And so as we are sharing our stories, my family comes to the United States from Cuba in the 60s. And a part of my racial autobiography in my family is 2 of my grandparents are Black Cubans. My great-grandfather, as an Afro-Cuban, had to fight for the right to share the battlefield with white Cuban soldiers at a time when that was considered revolutionary. And 2 of my grandparents were white Cuban. And so everyone in my family had a racial nickname. We all did. Most Latino families, we have these racial nicknames. That's a part of our racial history. And so for me, this understanding of who I was always Havao. Havao, in our language of how we do race in Cuba, means light-skinned Black. And literally, there was not a conscious moment in my life where I didn't have that. It wasn't always good or bad, but it was just always there. Right? And so the second day of kindergarten, I'm sitting down with my best friend, Matt Kenzemius, 15 minutes from here in Bloomington. And, having a great day and Sitting there, my mom coached me up. I'm July 16th birthday, so the first day of kindergarten, I wasn't really having it. I had to be coerced with the Egg McMuffin, like halfway through the door, halfway through the day. And then at the end, my mom said, tomorrow's gonna be even better. I'm gonna pack your favorite lunch. And so I've got my bistec encebollado, my sauteed steak sandwich, and I've got my pasteles cubanos, my Cuban pastries for dessert, and I'm all excited, and we're sitting down for lunch, and it's me and my best friend, Matt. Matt's white. He's got peanut butter and jelly, bistec encebollado, peanut butter jelly. There you go. We're sitting there, and there is a food service staff member walking the room, white woman. And she makes her way over to our table, and she has a scowl. And I'd never forget it because I'd never seen an adult look at me like that before. It's 5 years old. And she says, what kind of mother would send their child to school with this garbage? And throws away my food. Oh, yeah. And so in my story of the impact of having to deal with race in my life, that was the moment. And while it's real clear how that was an injurious experience to me, what I talk about with my best friend Matt, who now works in criminal justice, and talks about how he was underserved because we didn't get this understanding in our schooling process, was what was the learning to him as a white male and what was modeled for him in that moment, right? And so this idea of we all have a story. And to move forward on these issues is to appreciate, as Taya was laying out this morning, we don't live in a country where we can say, remember that year when we had racial equity? And here's the playbook of how we did that. We've always been in a society that has created this hierarchy of belief about our value as human beings connected to the idea of race, which of course isn't biologically, scientifically real, but something that was socially constructed. People made it up. And how we continue to make that up is an ongoing process. And the narratives that get spun and that get diffused tend not to be the kinds of narratives that bring us closer to our deepest humanity, right? And so being able to critically analyze the narratives that come to us, but not ever losing sight of our own personal lived racial experience in that is what I would offer to you. And so it's from that experience that I come to this country. My connection to Miguel, my family comes in the 60s. My uncle was drafted at age 15 to play for the Washington Senators. The Washington came to the United States from extreme poverty in Cuba. By the time he was 19, he was in the major leagues with the Washington Senators, and of course the Washington Senators become the Minnesota Twins. On my mother's side, my tia Esperanza is married to my Uncle Sandy, and by marriage, so I have two uncles on the Twins in the 60s, and my mother and father who grew up 20 minutes from each other in Cuba, never met in Cuba, and they meet right here in Minneapolis, right? And so as we talk about our stories, there tends to be a lot of prestige put on the story of my uncle, going back to Taya's point about the success story, and we always can't see the prestige of someone like my mother, who worked for 40 years at Honeywell on assembly lines and cleaning, and has two reconstructive shoulders to prove for it, and two reconstructed knees, but modeled a kind of work ethic, a kind of humanity for me and my brother and sister that was absolutely remarkable, but didn't have the benefit of much formal education in Cuba, given the history of systemic racism in Cuba when she was growing up. And so that's a little bit of my story. And I, again, thank you all for being here and encourage you to find your story. So thank you.
Can you hear me? Um, I will try my best to speak loud. My name is Zainab Abdi, and I'm from St. Catherine University, majoring in political science, international relations, and philosophy. And I'm third year at St. Kitts. So the most question that I always has been asked when I came to United States was, why I came to United States, and why I don't go back to my home. I decided to keep silent and never answer those questions. Not because I was shy, not because I didn't know the language, but I didn't have the courage to answer them. I always felt that I was guilty of being a refugee. I always felt that I should not tell people who I am, where I'm from, and I didn't understand people even don't know where Yemen is located in the map. I always think about who's Zainab and what's the narrative that's missing, that I always don't share that narrative. The refugee girl, I always think of the energetic person who loves to jump around in Yemen's neighborhood, playing soccer and acting like a boy, because the only team that I could play soccer with is all boys soccer. In a society where I have been limited, what can I do? I was breaking that gap and believing that I could do whatever I want, speaking up, but I can't answer those questions when I came to United States. The first time Thea came to our high school and she asked us, would you like to share your story? I have never been asked that question. I'm always supposed to answer certain questions, but I have never been asked to share my own story. And that's the time when I was like, is there people gonna listen even to what things that I have to say? I shared my story about the beautiful of Yemen, the thing that I loved and where I came from. I told them about the greatest stories of my family, 12 members at the same house. Then the war started in Yemen. And everyone moved to different country. We missed some of them, we lost some of them, and I left some behind. I came to United States in 2014, and I left my little sister who we grew up together, and I couldn't bring her here because of the immigration process. We always have that narrative of we came here because we want to take jobs or have better jobs or better life, or we don't like our country. But I have never had the same feelings because even though my mom was here 18 years, I never asked to come to United States. I loved my family back home. I loved my small community. I know where I'm gonna go, and I know which college I'm gonna go to. But those dreams has been destroyed because of a war that we didn't ask for, and because of a name that I didn't ask to be named by a refugee. We always silence ourselves and not tell those stories, but it's time to tell them, otherwise we're gonna lose those stories. And that's when I decided to speak up, to tell my story, to make my own name in an organization. What's gonna be my title? Because we always been told to do certain things, but I really don't want to follow those rules. I wanna make my own rules, break the gates, and do everything I want. I have never thought I'm gonna meet the Nobel Peace Prize. And I was like, who's Malala? I didn't know about her story, and I had to Google. And it was amazing to share my story with her. I didn't know that I'm gonna come and speak at the UN. I didn't know that my story is gonna go that high. But all I know is I'm telling the missing narrative of my Yemeni story. The story that just last year in the United States, people know about it because of one person who died. But there is a lot of people who are dying and still dying, and people not knowing about that story. We all wait for that green light to start, and we are in the middle of the red line. We are waiting to speak, we are waiting to that light to show so we could start. But sometimes it's okay to start when it's red. And don't follow that advice when you're driving. I always wanted to say that when is the right time to speak? When is the right time to tell my own story? but there is no any right time. Sometimes we need to say it so we could change the narrative, we could change the society. And I have been asked, what do you advise me to do? What's the next step? We talked about empathy, listening, sharing other stories, because all of us have a story to tell. It could be our own story, our parents, grandparents, our neighbors. But the important thing is you have neighbors around you. You need to meet them. You need to see them and tell them that they are welcome here. They could be different than you. They have different religion, speak different language, but we could communicate in different way. And that's how I loved the people around me who tried to put me into this new society by speaking the same language I do, trying to say marhaba in English, in Arabic, which is hi. That makes me smile, even though I know that's the only word they know. But I loved it to see that they're trying to learn one word to make me feel I'm welcome. And that's the next step of like what we could do from now. We have people we study with, we have people we teach, people we work with, people we see them in the street, people we buy things from them. But we need to smile, and we need to welcome them and tell them that they belong here, and we hear their story. Thank you very much. My sister now, she made her way through illegal immigration way from Egypt to Italy, and now she's in Belgium.
So we will take some questions for just a few minutes before we play the game. But we are being recorded, so I want to make sure we use the mic so that folks in the recording can hear. So if you have a few questions, a couple minutes of those. Any questions about their stories or how their stories relate to your story? Are we going to be Minnesota shy this morning? Oh, there's one back there. See, I knew someone would break the ice. Probably, maybe someone from Minnesota, maybe not, I don't know.
Hi, my name's Nicole Kemp. I am originally from Minnesota. I just moved back. I was living in London for the last 8 years. So, yeah, the diversity thing is very prevalent over there as well. I went through Brexit over there. That was an interesting time. I was just wondering how we could get more involved with this organization. I mean, I love hearing people's stories and, listening. And is there a way to get more involved?
Yeah, my favorite question. So yeah, we have a table outside. My colleagues are actually sitting right there. Wave. And so yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways. And we have, believe it or not, now a national distributor, and we're like an official publisher now. I still have to pinch myself when I say that. So yeah, our goal is to go to all 50 states. We're 4 down, only 46 to go. So yes, and we actually work with this wonderful organization called Welcoming America. And last year they've expanded and they've created something that's called Welcoming International. And the executive director, David Lubell, now moved to Berlin with his whole family to head Welcoming International. Like I said before, unfortunately, this is a global problem. I go to NIC, the National Immigrant Integration Conference, every year for the past 5 years. People from Australia, from Germany, from New Zealand, from Saudi Arabia. I mean, people from all over the world come to learn from Americans, how to do this immigrant integration in a meaningful and positive and in a way that's going to be really creating happy and prosperous and just communities. And yeah, I'm excited about that. Apparently there's not a green card in Europe, or it's a blue card. So they were like, maybe you could do blue card stories in Europe. I was like, okay, we're ready.
Oh, there's another question, yeah.
So as this was started before the most recent political climate. How does the situations today affect the 5-year plan, 10-year plan of what you guys are doing, or how have you guys altered or changed the course of the direction that you're going with today's current political climate?
You know, it's two ways to think everything that happened to you in life. You can be disappointed, or you can see this as an opportunity. I want to see this as opportunity. Opportunity that we can come more united together, that we can make a difference. And that's not mean that don't hurt. We're in many pains and many times. That's our life for our lives, and somehow, some way we have pains. So I think this is a country that has so many years of history. And so many years of history, good history, some other challenging history. Together we can change that. And when the other person asks about how can I be involved, yes, you can. Everyone in this room can be involved. Not necessarily maybe inside of one office, but in everything that you do and everything that you speak, be our voices.
Yes, I just will add, you can rent the exhibit, which is outside. You can create a book club and read the books. You can buy a Story Stitch card game. But most importantly, I really have to say, for the past 2 years, we've seen a rise in hate crime. And I will tell you that it is getting very, very worse. And we're very intentional in which state we pick next. We have a lot of requests from New York and Oakland, and even Hawaii. I would love to go to all those places, but frankly, it's not where they need us most. So we're in the process of developing something that's called Immigrant Vulnerability Index. Believe it or not, states that need us the most, like South Dakota, where we really want to go, there's no funding. So we actually use the proceeds from sales of books to fund the books where, they really, really need them, but there's nobody, because you know who controls the money and the foundations in that state, right? Not really immigrants. So it's really, really hard to fund this project in a state that they would be actually needed the most. So we're very intentional. The reason why we are working in Wisconsin right now is because, what happened in the recent elections and a huge backlash that followed. And at the same time, because have you guys heard of the Rohingya refugees? The current active, horrible, horrible genocide happening. The largest community of Rohingya refugees is in Milwaukee, out of all the United States, 600 families. And they just went through that whole ordeal. They finally found safety here, and they're already experiencing backlash. And we will not stand and let that happen. So.
As some of you may know, our own Liberian population is threatened with deportation. They came here after civil war and persecution, and now their status is being taken away. So one more question, and then we're going to get to the game.
Great, I get to sneak it in. My name's Sarah Ashby. I am a 6th grade teacher at International Spanish Language Academy. We're a Spanish immersion school and an IB World School, so we really care about fostering the global community. So I'm already sold on the Story Stitch game. We're going to buy a bunch. I'm wondering, just as a language teacher and as someone that promotes intercultural communication, would you ever consider making it in other languages, like Spanish or any other language, kind of honoring that home language?
Short answer, yes. We'll get on that right away.
All right, Taya, what are the instructions for the game? How do you want us to run this? We'll play it for, let's see, say about a half an hour or so before we close up.
Mm-hmm. So instructions are obviously inside the deck, but for you to make it even easier, we also printed a sheet for you.
Got the sheet, instruction sheets.
So it looks like this. This is the instructions. Usually it's great to just appoint one person to walk you through the instructions. I will have my colleagues here help out if at any point anybody has questions, but it's really, really a self-intuitive game. So just follow the instructions, and I can't wait to hear your feedback in 20 to 30 minutes.
All right, enjoy the game.
Hello. It's just so wonderful to watch you all having this intense conversations with laughter and tears and everything in between. It is now 5 minutes to 10, and I just want to leave a couple of minutes left. Is there anybody in the room brave to just share 1 or 2 words what your impression of the game is, so that we can, 1 word, 1 sentence.
Here we go, one right here.
I'll just quickly say that I feel seen in a way that I don't usually.
Ooh, thank you.
I've got 2 back here. Oh, here we are.
My name is Rita Webster. I would say powerful. It engaged us in conversations at a depth that would not have happened without the game.
Wonderful.
Did you have one as well? Yes.
My name is Andrea Syons, and I just want to say we didn't get past a first question. We all connected, and I would say that we could probably keep connecting on the first question for the rest of the morning.
Someone right here.
I'm Andrea, so we're similar. I want to say that I'm buying it. I'm taking several boxes back to Washington County, where I work, and I think this is going to be an awesome team building activity. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Here we are.
I'm Chris, and I felt connected to everybody. The stories were also relatable as they were told. I could put myself in everybody's position as I heard the story. So for me, it was connection.
Thank you.
So this side of the room, let's try to get some of this, the other side too. We'll start right here.
My name's Hal Reynolds. I would say humanizing. I thought it just brought levity, it allowed you to connect on the things that we all care the most about. So it wasn't about titles, but it was just about being people.
Here's someone.
My name is Diane. I thought it was excellent. I thought no matter how tall the walls are, this is a bridge to overcome those walls.
Poetic. I love it. Anyone else?
Okay.
Anyone else?
Well, I am always so excited when people actually experience playing the game because, like I said, when I talk about it, people just don't really get it. And then, especially when I'm like, it's a game. And people are like, board game. And then I'm like, storytelling. And, storytelling is all over the place. But I'm so delighted that you did get up very, very early this morning, braved this bitter cold winter, came here and connected to your neighbors at a table and gave us the space to share our stories. So thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful rest of the day and life.
Yes. Thanks to Thea and to Miguel and to Luis and Zainab for sharing their stories and being with us. As you heard, of course, books are for sale out there in the lobby. There's also quite a few of the pop-up banners that are telling the stories of the folks who are telling their stories for Green Card Voices that you can look at. This exhibit will be up for at least 10:30. Don't forget to fill out your evaluation forms. We'd like to know what you thought about today's breakfast. Of course, register for the forum because the early bird rate expires at midnight tonight. And our next Diversity Insights breakfast will be in June. We'll be talking about white fragility. Thanks everyone for coming. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.